My house is an audio nightmare. There is a plane going overhead right now. Across the street that way, there's somebody doing yard work. And I heard a garbage truck just earlier. So I don't know if the gardener counts as essential labor. So I feel like what he's doing is a criminal crime, but I could be off on that. So the gardener stopped, but there's been 2 planes back to back now. So any second I'm gonna start recording this and the audio is gonna be okay. How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to VoroMotors. I'm AJ Hart, here again with another tutorial. Now today I'm going to be going over how to install a new voltmeter onto the EMOVE Cruiser electric scooter. Getting a new voltmeter is one of the more common issues that we have with these scooters, and so I figured it'd be nice to just kind of walk over how we replace them in our own shop so that maybe you can order it yourself and replace it on your end. It's a pretty easy fix, it just takes a little bit of time and a lot of care. So last week, my technician and I sat down and replaced one of the voltmeters. So I'm gonna show you that footage and walk with you through it so that you kind of know what we did, why we did it, and how you can do it yourself. Let's go ahead and jump into it. Now the first thing that our technician is going to have to do is get the handlebars off on the right side. We're using a screwdriver to kind of pry it loose and spraying a little bit of simple green inside to try to loosen up this space. It's going to be a little bit of a project to get all of these handlebars off, and you're going to need a good amount of force. This can take a little bit. Once it's finally off, we're ready to start taking off the rest of the parts. First, we're going to take off the brake unit. This one you can just go ahead and loosen up with an Allen wrench and slide right off. Next, we're going to take off the LCD display. There would be an LCD right here at the top, but that's being repaired on this scooter. Just loosen it a little bit and slide it right off. You do need to be careful though, because there are going to be 4 nuts on the back end that you want to make sure you don't lose. Next is the actual voltmeter itself. If you go to the back, you can loosen this little screw and slide it right off that too. You're going to notice that all of the cable kind of gathers into this sleeve before it goes into the stem. We're going to need to cut all of that loose. The sleeve is held together with some zip ties, so we're going to need to cut all the zip ties off of that first. Then we're going to go ahead and pull the cords out from the sleeve and go ahead and remove the zip ties near the top as well, because we're going to need all of our cables separated. Now that all of the cables are separated, we're going to pull the voltmeter cable away from the others and let that kind of hang down so we know it's separate from the rest. Now, if you go to the base of the stem and where the folding mechanism is, you're going to notice another sleeve with some zip ties. Go ahead and cut that and remove the sleeve too. Now we want to find out which one of these cables is for the voltmeter. You're going to know which one it is because it's got some writing on it, just so that we know that it has some power. Now if you tug on each side of the cable, you're going to feel it slide through the stem. It's going to be pretty snug, but it does move. Now in order to continue, we need to remove the front base plate. This should be pretty easy, just 6 screws in total. You're going to take off the 2 on the side and then the 4 on the front. Now that the screws are out, we're just going to bang the front plate off and pull it away. Now we're going to start tugging the cable down into this lower area so that we have enough slack for the next step. It is still going to be a little snug, but you're going to want a little bit of wiggle room for this. Now that we have some slack, we're going to go ahead and pull the controller out. Now that the controller's out, you're going to see a whole mess of cables. I want you to hunt down the blue, green, and yellow cables that have a white and green end connecting them. You need to unplug those now. These are all for the battery and they keep this whole thing charged, and if you don't unplug these, you're going to end up getting electrocuted. Now you're going to notice that there's a bunch of cables here, and luckily we pulled enough slack so that we can find out where the voltmeter actually plugs into the controller. Here it is, and you're just going to unplug it. Now go ahead and run it back through all the loose cable that you just made. Now that it's loose, we're going to need to take a photo of it, because when we plug in the new voltmeter, we're going to want to make sure we know how it's supposed to look. Now you're going to go ahead and pull these wires out from the voltmeter connector, but you do need to be careful when you're pulling these out because you don't want it to break. Like that. Okay, so you'll notice here that the red and black wires still have these silver prongs on them and the green one doesn't. We weren't very careful when we took them out, so the green one broke inside the connector. And the bummer is that we still need that connector. So we're going to have to pull that out. Our technician is trying to get them out with a pair of pliers at first, but that doesn't seem to work out. It's really wedged in there. So our technician comes up with a different idea. She's going to go ahead and push it through from this side with a small screwdriver just to tap it, and then use the pliers to pull it out on the other side. You'll notice that she's being very careful with this because, again, this little black connector is important. We are going to need it to plug the new voltmeter into the controller. And there we go. Put the connector somewhere where you know it will be safe so that you don't lose it. Now we're ready to start installing the new voltmeter. First, cut the end off of the old voltmeter. Don't worry about it because there's no power. You should notice a little bit of slack and give between the cable now. Not too much, but enough that it can slide around. Now you're going to take the new voltmeter and you're going to go ahead and tape it down to the old voltmeter cable. Make sure that it's nice and secure, but not too fat. We're going to need to be sliding this down through the stem of the scooter. Just grab the end of the old voltmeter cable and start pulling the new voltmeter through. Don't start yanking and really shoving it, because if you do, you're going to either break the tape and lose the feed, or you're going to damage the new voltmeter, both of which would be really bad calls. Now just go ahead and start feeding it down and through the stem nice and slowly. This is going to be a little bit of a process to make sure that we don't damage anything. It took us about 15 minutes to get it all the way through the stem. Again, make sure that you're not yanking on it. Just little by little, inch by inch, it'll start to come all the way through. And there we go on this end, starting to come through. Now you'll notice that one of our prongs actually did start coming out through the tape, which our technician realizes could become a real issue. So once we're done feeding it through, she's going to go ahead and put a new layer of tape over it. Again, we're going to make sure that we keep it skinny because we do have some more sections that we need to pull this feed through, so we can't tape it too much. Just enough that it stays secure. Now we're going to go ahead and pull it down through the base. Our technician realized that it was going to be easier if we got rid of the sleeves, so we yanked the sleeve out and then went ahead and fed the cable down through this hole. Again, being pretty gentle with it to make sure that we don't break anything. Make sure to go ahead and feed the cable down a little bit more through the scooter. You want to make sure that there's give on the top and at the base for general movement. You don't want anything to be too tight at these spots. Just try to match it with the rest of the cable that you see. Now we're going to go ahead and start removing all the tape. This is also going to be a process. Our technician is going to start using a razor blade, but I can't really recommend that. She knows what she's doing and is a trained professional, and I know that if I tried to do this, I'd probably damage one of the two cables, which we're really not trying to do right here. We're going to go ahead and feed it back through the little corner like the rest of the cables do. Now we're going to go ahead and take that connector from previously and plug our ends back into the connector. Go back to that photo that we took a little bit earlier to make sure that you have the connections right when you plug it back in. If you plug them into the wrong spots, you're going to run into new voltmeter issues. When you push them into the connector, you should hear and feel a little click or pop so that you know that it's seated correctly. Just go ahead and push them in until you hear that click. But again, be a little gentle, you don't want to break anything. Now that we're all connected, we're going to go ahead and plug it into the battery control. You'll notice that the red matches to where the red is on the other side, same with the black and the green. It should be pretty easy to tell if something's gone wrong. Now, if you look at the voltmeter, and you put the key in and turn it, you'll see that it starts reading. Now, we have to start putting it all back together. We'll start this by plugging in the power cords that we unplugged earlier first. Green to green, yellow to yellow, blue to blue, just like it was before. Then, we're going to start tucking some of these cables in so that we can get the controller in. Just gently kind of nudge the cables back in. Again, there is still power here, so you can electrocute yourself if you're forceful with anything. Please be careful when you do this. we're going to go ahead and slide the controller in here, and we notice that it's not quite seated right. So we're going to take it out and push it in again and try to make this right. Again, please be careful, and this project takes a little bit of time to get done right. And this time it sits a lot better. We notice that the cable's hanging out a little bit, so we're going to go ahead and feed that back into the side to make sure that when we do put the cover back on, it's all secure and inside. Putting this back on is pretty easy. We're just going to reverse what we did last time. Put all 4 screws into the front cover. And then tighten the screws on the 2 sides. Now we're going to go ahead and take that sleeve from before and wrap it around the bottom set of cables. We're going to use a screwdriver to kind of nudge the base back into that little hole so that that's nice and secure. Once that's secure, we're going to go ahead and put a zip tie back on the base like we did before, and we're going to put a zip tie near the top. We're going to go ahead and cut the ends off of that too, just so it looks a little bit nicer. Now, when we get to the top, we're going to go ahead and stand the scooter up so that we can see where all these cables end up. When you slide them on, you're going to slide the voltmeter on first. Then you're going to slide on the LCD display. Again, normally you would have the actual display attached to this little brace. And then we're going to slide on the brake. Finally, we're going to slide on the grip. We're going to go ahead and put it on and use a dead blow hammer to kind of nudge that where it should be. We're going to slide the brake all the way to the handle and then tighten it with the bolt on the bottom. We'd also go ahead and tighten the LCD around the same spot and make sure that all your cables are kind of gathered together. Once the cables are gathered together, we're going to go ahead and hit that with a zip tie to make sure that it doesn't go anywhere and stays a little organized. Then, near the base of the stem, we're going to go ahead and start putting on that other sleeve. Just go ahead and wrap it around all the cables that you can. If some stuff is a little bit more wiggly now, it should be fine. Just gather up what you can. We're going to tuck the bottom into the stem as much as we can manage, and then we're going to hit that with a zip tie. We're also going to hit a zip tie on the top of the sleeve, and just like that, you should have all of the cables tightened and secure so that your voltmeter is ready and new and installed. You're going to want to tighten the nut on the back to make sure that it's angled where you want it to be.
And there you have it. Replacing the voltmeter is, like I said, a pretty easy fix. It just takes some time and a lot of patience. We hope that this video helped, and if you have any other concerns or thoughts that you might have about replacing the voltmeter, go ahead and leave that in the comments down below. And if you have any ideas for other videos that you'd like to see us do, go ahead and leave those in the comments down below too. Thank you so much, we hope that this helps, and we hope you enjoy your ride.